Ooh, I hit a little of that lavender too. That's all right. Okay, let me wipe my knife. That's all right. Because, you know, we don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. And that's when you really experience the joy of painting.
Bob Ross was a wizard with a paintbrush, the lord of the landscape. And he couldn't have made his magic without tools, like the caveman's rock, the conductor's baton, the cartoonist's pen. Bob had an arsenal at his disposal to create his art. Fan brushes, oil paints, and palette knives.
Now, all you need to do here is push this almighty knife right into the canvas. And you may have noticed by now, we use no patterns, we do no sketching. We let this flow right out of our heart onto the canvas.
But Bob's most important tools were pushed out from within. His heart, his humor, his faith.
And God bless, my friend.
His imagination, and most of all, his determination.
There's a happy little thing that just lives there. Just let your imagination go crazy.
It's those qualities that have become as big a part of Bob Ross's legacy as the paintings he made for us.
And you know, when you buy your first tube of paint, you get an artist license. And that license says you can do anything that makes you happy. So use that license. It's yours forever and ever.
Here's the story of an artist with tons of heart and imagination, a lot of drive and determination. Only this dude's tools come in a can. And he's not only been inspired by Bob Ross, he's immortalized Bob in a special way, leaving his mark and spreading paint and joy on walls in sunny Florida and in New York City, too.
Now, you say it was this cold when you painted this?
Oh, yes. It might have been colder than this. And the cans are metal, so they stay cold. It was free. I needed to bring, like, a heater out here.
Which begs the question, why?
Because I'm nuts, and I need help.
It doesn't matter if people think you're crazy, you know. Painters are noted for being a little weird anyway. We can get away with things like that. If I acted normal, nobody would know me.
My name is Andaluz. I go by Andaluz The Artist. I'm originally from Queens, New York. I've been living on Long Island most of my life. I'm known as a street artist, muralist, but I do everything. I make music, I do a little bit of fashion, anything creative, that's me. As a kid, you know, growing up in the late 80s, early 90s, I was big into cartoons. I used to sketch a lot of cartoons. I used to want to be a comic book designer.
Hope you enjoy that. That was one of my early loves, was doing cartoons.
Growing up in Queens, off of Jamaica Ave, where you constantly hear the train, and there's just so much going on, all the liveliness, so that played a major part, I think, in the creativity and whatnot.
That's when you experience the joy of freedom and creativity.
I always had a gift with art since I was a kid. I was always sketching. I was always ahead of my peers. You know, no kids were sketching like me.
Right out there in front of the rest of them. He went to the front of the class.
I started with the airbrush because I didn't like to paint. And I had an art teacher, Miss Amakawa, shout out to her, who would bring me into her class and she would keep me out of trouble and she would say, hey, paint. But I never wanted to paint because I didn't understand the paintbrush. It's way different than using a pencil. It's a different tool.
I know you can do it because you can do anything that you believe you can do.
By the time I picked up a spray can, it was like second nature. It's easier to use the spray can than the airbrush. But my first spray painted mural was with the company called Painted Pieces. They're out in Huntington as well. I was freelancing for them at the time.
He found out that painting can be fun and he can make a happy buck or two off of it.
I was trying to work for them for years because they do murals. So I'd go in there and I'd be like, hey, I can paint. The lady would look at it and she would look at all the airbrush stuff and she'd be like, oh, this is graffiti. And then at the time, she had come in from Brooklyn and she was looking at all the street art in Brooklyn. She was like, hey, can you do something like this? I said, of course, this is what I do. And at that point, Robin Williams had just passed not too long before that. And I was like, why don't we do Robin Williams? I think that'd be cool, to just do a cool piece. It's a staple in Huntington on Jericho Turnpike. So Bob Ross was, besides cartoons, Bob Ross and Mr. Rogers is like what I used to watch as a kid. And Bob Ross was just like so calming and soothing.
If this is your first time with us, let me extend a personal invitation for you to drag out your paints and paint along with us each week. or just pull up the old easy chair and spend a relaxing half hour as we play some of nature's masterpieces on canvas.
So I would constantly be like in awe by what he did. How did he create this? And this went from nothing. Now there's a mountain. Now there's a tree. He's so calm about everything he does. And I was so intrigued about everything Bob Ross. And at that time as a kid, I didn't even know his name. I just knew, I was like, oh yeah, that's the white guy with the afro, you know?
Look at this, isn't he the cutest little devil? He's fighting his way through the forest there. Uh-oh. There's the forest.
So I loved Bob Ross growing up. And you know, even in school, I got into an argument with my art teacher in high school when I was talking about Bob Ross, and she was like, oh, he's not a real artist. And I was like, what? Are you crazy? And I love my teacher. This is like a lady that I love so much, but I got into a crazy argument with her, like, you have to be kidding me. Like, all this is techniques, like he's amazing.
Not trying to teach you to copy here. We're only trying to teach you a technique and turn you loose on the world.
And so, as I actually spoke to her the other day, and because I still talk to her, she's an amazing lady, you know, she helped me get to where I'm at. So, and she was mentioning Bob Ross and how I had put a change in her mind about Bob Ross and his art and just his personality.
I guarantee you that you will certainly get a positive response from it.
I told my father, we were working on a mural out in Huntington, and I said, you know what, Dad, we need to do a Bob Ross mural. I'm gonna paint the Bob Ross mural, and I want to dedicate it to him, to his family, and I want to do something for Bob Ross.
I want to dedicate it to some fantastic friends that I have there, to all the people who came to watch the show, and they made me feel at home.
So what had happened was I had a gig with Adidas for a mural for around Art Basel, which is actually coming up in a few weeks. What's going on, guys? It's your artist, your favorite artist, Andaluz The Artist. Currently in Miami, we are in Wynwood again. So it was a mural for Art Basel, and it was in December, and I was like, oh, we're going to Miami? While we're in Florida, Bob Ross is from Florida. I know he's from Daytona, but we can do something in Wynwood. I'm already gonna be there painting a mural for Adidas.
I grew up in Florida, and we lived so far back in the woods, they used to have to pipe sunlight into us.
So I started making some phone calls. They were all friendly people. Oh yeah, Bob was my good friend, and called these people Nic Hankins, who runs the Bob Ross workshop. Amazing guy. I mean, Nick has a heart of gold, pure heart. So I'm talking to him, I'm telling him what I'm trying to do. He was like, man, that sounds amazing. I said, yeah, I want to go down to Wynwood, or at least even Daytona. I want to go do it somewhere where Bob Ross is from. And so he said, well, we're not far. I have a shop here. And I'm like, do you got a wall on the side of your building? And he's like, no, we don't have a wall. But I told him, I don't want to do this mural without you. Because I started looking up all his stuff, and I started seeing his art. And I was like, man, I'm not going to have that much time to paint this, even if I find a big wall. But maybe it would be cool to do Bob Ross style, but a large scale, right? Where we're gonna, instead of using a small brush, we're using brooms. Like, I already had these ideas in my head as I'm talking to him. Like, ideas are like,
the only thing we want to do here is give you ideas.
This is how I am. When I start creating, like, my brain, I can't stop walking. I walk around the circle nonstop. I could walk around the circle for an hour.
There, tiny little circles.
I said, listen, you talk to whoever you gotta talk to. The only way I'm doing this mural is if you take place and do some background work. Just a little bit. I need you in the video. All right, guys, so we're here with Nick. This is Nick, legendary right here. He's the Bob Ross instructor. He runs the Bob Ross workshop, right?
Bob Ross Art Workshop.
Bob Ross Art Workshop. And he is helping out with some of this background. We filled in a little bit of it, and now he's gonna put his magic touch. He's gonna paint happy trees.
Bob's big mural brush.
Look at this, that's Bob's big mural brush. There's not many of those, right? It's limited. But that's how I ended up painting that wall that I was gonna paint regardless. I was gonna paint it, but you know, Bob Ross Inc. ended up sponsoring it, and I had Nick helping me, which was just an amazing feat. So yeah, there was a reason why I picked Northern Lights. I remember that painting specifically. I always loved that piece.
And I think today we'll do some Northern Lights. So come on up here and let's get started.
I love the Northern Lights in general. I've yet to see it, but one day soon. I picked that piece because remember, this was around Art Basel, so it was December. Already in my head, I was like, man, the Northern Lights would go perfect because there's already snow, the whole nine.
We're out here right now, got Nick in the back. He is putting in crazy work. Look at that mountain. This is extreme Bob Ross style. This is to the max. We're taking it to a whole nother level right here. My God.
So I said, you know what? Let's really make the Northern Lights pop. Let's make it real colorful. Let's make his shirt colorful. And I want to add the flair of Andaluz The Artist, which is like the neon lights, the colors, the pop, with actual, you know, with the Bob Ross flair. And my goal was, let's do a large Bob Ross piece. Like, let's use Bob Ross techniques in a large scale. How do we do that, right? I didn't really know how we were gonna do that, but I was like, we could get it done. In my head, I thought about this before we got there. We used rollers to fill out the background, the sky would blend it out. I wanted to sketch it, right? So I sketched the whole thing. If you looked at the video, I sketched it with the roller. Just the same way Bob Ross was kind of like, la, la, la. I just got in the zone. I kind of seen everything in my head. And I was thinking of, well, what would Bob Ross do? Oh, well, he would do this, he would do that. And I filled out the background because I knew I had a day or two before Nick came down to do his like expertise stuff.
Now, if you do this painting along with me, by the time you're finished, you will be an expert at making evergreen trees.
And in my head, I'm like, how do we make it easier for him? Because he's like, I never painted such large scale. This is, you know, for him, I think he was a little like intimidated by it. And I'm like, man, you could do this. This is nothing. This is just techniques. You got this.
Look at the technique. Look at that. Now he's just showing off.
These little trees just live in your brush. All you gotta do is push them out.
But yes, it's different. You know, a canvas is flat. You can pull things easier. It's wet on wet, you know, so it just blends easier. This is, you know, house paint, you know, and it's just like, it dries quickly. So you have to move quickly.
This guy is phenomenal. It's like the spirit of Bob Ross is on him. Yeah, that's nice.
All for you, Bob.
All for Bob.
You know, when we talk about Bob Ross, when we talk about God, we're talking about science, right? Like people like to take one, well, there's science or there's God. Well, to me, there's no science without God.
If painting does nothing else, it should make you happy. It should teach you to see nature through different eyes and make you appreciate some of God's creations.
There's no mathematics. Everything is an equation. You're not here because it just happened by accident. Everything happens the way it needs to happen.
It's the way God intended them to be.
I know that energy never dies. It's just a scientific fact. Energy just gets transferred. That's a scientific fact. We're just flesh, but we're also a spirit. We're also a soul. When someone passes away, they pass away, but what we don't realize is what happens when they pass away. People cry, people are sad, people get inspired, but something happens. Nothing doesn't happen. Something happens because that energy continues to pass on. So he touched so many people even after he passed, and he's gonna continue doing that because the effect that he left here when he was in the flesh was so big, it was bigger than what we see in the flesh. We just see, oh yeah, sometimes we don't realize, someone even says, God, oh, God bless you. Oh, cool, cool. You don't realize what he's telling you. He's blessing you. That person is saying, God bless you. He just blessed you, but you didn't understand what just happened.
Happy painting, and God bless, my friend.
So now that he's not here, you're seeing the cause of his interaction while he was on this earth. But that that was that, what they call Mamba mentality. That energy passed off. It inspired so many people.
It's a one-on-one situation, and I think people realize that, and they do feel that they know me, and I feel that I know them.
So what you do now in the flesh will inspire people. So do I say Bob Ross is moving me? I would say that energy is moving me. That energy inspired me to do what I need to do, you know? And so, and as far as Bob Ross is concerned, I mean, I feel like God had a heavy hand on Bob Ross. My personal opinion, he was using Bob Ross to do his will. And whatever his will that needs to be done is going to be done regardless.
It's like God had his paintbrush out and he just went crazy with color.
I get energy from being outside painting a mural, right? Like there's just, for me, it gives me like a rush. Even in I'll be in the craziest neighborhoods, in the craziest environments, and I'll just be like in another world, you know? And I see a lot of things going around me. I see a lot of depression. I see a lot of anxiety. I see a lot of demons. I see all types of crazy stuff.
That's the reason God gives us those little sad times. That way we know when we got a good one.
But I know that there has to be joy. There has to be light in the dark. So my goal is to bring that joy to your neighborhood with this piece. That's the same thing Bob Ross would do on a canvas, and we would watch, and a lot of people that were down and out, you hear stories about, man, I was having crazy thoughts and I watched this and he soothed me and he inspired me. It's the same thing that creatives do unknowingly. We just do it, but it brings us joy. That's the joy of Bob Ross. That's the joy of creativity, is knowing that you're bringing joy and inspiration to someone else.
The old clock on the mural tells me we've got another finished podcast episode. I want to thank my guest, Andaluz The Artist.
Right here,
I thought this was Gandalf from The Lord of the Rings,
it looks like
which would be awesome. I mean, right?
like Gandalf. But I went to Walt Whitman High School, right? We're on Walt Whitman Road, so it's only right that we put one of the world's greatest poets, Walt Whitman, on this wall right here.
Gandalf.
This happy little episode was co-produced, filmed, and edited by James Shapiro at Jansen Media, with help from Chris Moncada at Jansen Media.
We have the image of I'm losing my mind.
Chocolate babies.
It's so cold. It's so cold. Leonardo da Vinci, right here. We're paying homage to him right here.
Support your local public television station. Say thanks for giving us Bob Ross and the joy of painting. We want to see your paintings. Use hashtag #PaintLikeBobRoss. Bob Ross certified instructors, they're the only ones that know how to teach you Bob's world-famous painting method. So don't settle for second best. Find a local CRI at bobross.com and then click Take a Class. Got your own Bob Ross story to tell? You can leave us a message at 866-FANBRUSH or send an email to podcast@bobross.com.
So, and shout out to all these guys here, Gank, and some of these are some Long Island graffiti legends. They left their stickers here. So this is still here from when the art store was here.
And you can follow us on Instagram at BobRoss_The Joy of Painting. I'm Ron Scalzo.
I'm here in Queens. Is this Queens?
No.
Cut.
The Joy of Bob Ross is written and produced by me, Ron Scalzo, in partnership with Bob Ross Inc. Bob Ross name and images are registered trademarks of Bob Ross Inc.